Whether it's your first child, second, or third, bringing in a new baby can come with a bit of conflict. Today we are chatting about ways to avoid the late night bickering, early morning grouchiness, and overall fatigue that can plague new parents during the baby's first year of life. Thanks for joining us. This is Newbies.
He's gorgeous.
It's a girl.
Surprise! The whole family's here!
So when are you having the next one?
It's just poop.
Ready for another?
Wow, you look really tired.
Ready to go back to work?
Yellow poop? Seriously?
Did you sterilize this?
Sex? Now? You've got to be joking.
You should sleep when the baby sleeps.
She doesn't look anything like you.
I thought you already had your baby.
I did.
Babies don't come with instructions, so there's Newbies, helping new moms and new babies through the first year.
Welcome to Newbies. My name is Kaylee Hunt, and I'll be your host today. If you haven't already, be sure to visit our website at newmommymedia.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter, which keeps you updated on all of the episodes we release each week. Another great way to stay updated is to hit that subscribe button in your podcast app. And if you're looking for a way to get even more involved with our show, then check out our online community. It's called Mighty Moms. That's where we chat more about the topics discussed here on our show. And it's also an easy way to learn about our recording so you can join us live. This is a great episode for all new parents. I'm very excited to have our expert. Our expert today is Esha Mufti. Esha is the co-author of the book Daisy's Guide for Soon-to-Be Parents, the easy proven way to go from expecting parents to expert parents. Esha, thanks for joining us today. Please tell our listeners where you are located and who you live with, who is in your family.
Thanks so much, Kelly. I'm so excited to be here. I am based in Brooklyn right now, and my household consists of my husband, Josh, and our daughter, Amal.
I love that. I'm excited to get into parenting. I only have one daughter currently, expecting my second soon. My second kid, we don't know the sex yet, but
congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah. So I'm excited to get into parenting one and how, I'm going to ask your tips for when a new baby comes and you already have a toddler. So this will be a great transition for new moms who have one kid, but also kids who are, parents who have multiple kids. It's going to be very, very, very interesting. Anyway, we'll get into all of that first, but let's take a quick break. Welcome back. Today we're discussing how to avoid conflicts with your partner during baby's first year of life. So let's just chat. Let's jump right into it. First, let's talk about what led you to write your book. Was it your own postpartum experience, or were you already dabbling in this realm of, parents and parenting and conflicts between partners?
It was very much shaped by my own postpartum experience. So when our daughter was born in December 2023, my husband and I were like in the thick of it. We were sleep deprived, we were overwhelmed, and we were trying to figure out things on the fly with this like tiny new roommate who was constantly screaming in our faces.
Yep.
And one of the realizations we had was that we had sort of like talked around some big parenting decisions, but hadn't really like dug into them. We had a few friends who had had babies before us, and they'd shared a lot of resources. And so we both tried to learn about things and prepare for having a newborn. And we talked to each other about them at a high level, but we hadn't really like dived into how we felt about a lot of those things. And for example, like a big one for us postpartum was sleep. We thought we were going to sleep train. A lot of our friends had sleep trained, and it had worked really well for them. Like their babies were sleeping through the night. They were really happy. And based on everything that we heard about it, we were like, we're going to sleep train. And it turns out that I am not good at sleep training, and neither was my husband. And if we had actually just like dug into our personalities a little bit before and what might work for us, we probably would have discovered this in our pre-baby conversations. And of course, you're going to change your mind about some things after the baby is here, but that's why we created Daisy's Guide. It helps you build that foundation for learning together and talking to each other about these things so you can navigate parenthood together. Another one for me actually was breastfeeding, and this one was totally on me. For some reason, I assumed that I was going to be able to breastfeed with complete ease, and it didn't work out that way, and I felt awful. I spent a lot of time online where people, as you probably know, have a lot of strong opinions, and I just felt like terrible about myself and everything I was doing. Luckily, this one actually ended up working out for us because my husband really helped me. He pulled me up from the bottom of the internet floor. But it was a lesson for me that even though it might seem like a topic that's mainly for mom, your partner can really help support you. And we were lucky that it worked out for us, but talking about it before the baby is there can also really help you understand how you can be there for each other. And we kind of realized there's a ton of topics like this. And I came across some research that new parents have 2,500 arguments in baby's first year. And obviously, you're going to fight, but many of these can be avoidable because they stem often from like unstated expectations. And these can sort of like snowball. And again, that's the idea behind Daisy's guide. You can sort of surface those expectations before they become fights. And it's not really about doing things right, but just about having these conversations to make this transition a little bit like less chaotic and a little bit more connected.
I love that. I love that you touched on two big culprits of fights, right? Like breastfeeding struggles. And it's funny you said that you thought you were going to breastfeed with each, which honestly, a lot of women feel like. I was the opposite. I was so like, oh, I'll breastfeed maybe, maybe not. And then once I was in the thick of it, and my daughter has only been breastfed, she has never had formula. I just was, I don't know, 2, 3 weeks in, I was like, I'm not giving up. Like I'm doing
Yeah.
it, you know? And I so was like, that was not how I was in pregnancy at all. And even with this next baby that I'm carrying, I'm the same way. I'm like, if I breastfeed, I breastfeed. If not, it's okay, And so I can see how these little things of like mom's intuition or mom wanting to see, what she wants to do for her baby can cause conflict within, a marriage aspect. So question for you, how did you navigate the communication with your partner or your husband? That way he was on the same page and it's not like he's guessing what's in your mind, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I would love to say that I was really great at communicating, but to be totally honest, I wasn't. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that I really even knew what I wanted. It was just really emotional. And I just felt terrible, right? And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I want to pump. I want to be her to be able to latch, but it just wasn't working. So it was one of those instances where, if I'm being totally honest, and I could spin this, but I'm going to be candid. I don't think I communicated my needs very clearly, but it
Mm-hmm.
was a instance of my husband kind of seeing through that and really being able to be there for me. And, just, I remember he came in one day and I was researching on the internet, basically just people yelling at each other. And he was like, just stop. You're a great mom and you're trying so hard. And you are doing an amazing job. And our daughter is going to be great. And it sounds so small, but it was really, really helpful to hear. So in that one instance, I didn't quite communicate clearly, but in other instances, I think what I've learned is it's hard. It's going to be hard. Your emotions are going to be running wild. You're going to be exhausted. Both of you are going to be feeling things. But one sort of tip I've learned outside of this instance is if you can try to just be simple and direct in like what you need. So like if I need to take a shower or something, I'm not going to like wait around for him to realize I need to take a shower. I might just be like, can you take her for a second while I just hop in the shower? Or
Mm-hmm.
can you bring me a snack? And not necessarily waiting for big emotional conversations, but just trying to build in a couple of minutes a day to check in, to be like, how are you doing? How am I doing? What do we need more or less of? And again, like I said, it's not going to work out perfectly. So also just giving yourselves a lot of grace. Like you might snap at each other. It's not great, but you can recover from that. So yeah, in the breastfeeding instance, I wouldn't say it was my clearest communicating moment, but I think, learned some of these ways since that have worked well for us.
I love that. And so break down a little bit in your book for those interested. When do fights most likely happen? And does it really depend on the couple? I know for me, it was definitely my husband and I didn't sleep train at all. And I love that you said to really look at how you and your partner are as people. And there is no way me and my husband could sleep train. We basically never know what we're having for dinner, let alone what we're doing the next day. And so for us to have such a strict schedule of like baby down, our baby in bath by 7, read a book by 7:30, be in the crib by 8. That's just not how we live our lives. And it's worked for us. It really has, I would say for us, the bickering was mostly overnight when she was sleeping with us in a room. We co-slept for the first year of her life. And so that was when the most bickering was for us, because I am a light sleeper. My husband is a very, very heavy sleeper. And so he would sleep through every little squirm, wiggle, cry. And here I am like attending to her, nursing her through the night, and he's just snoring away. And so I got resentful, like, dude, hello, I'm doing a lot at night and I'm tired. Anyway, from your book and what you've seen, when does bickering really happen? Is it early morning? Is it overnight? Does it depend on just the dynamic of the household? Enlighten me.
Yeah, I think first of all, I love that you actually realized that about yourself on sleep training, because that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like, it actually stressed me out more to try to do it because it's so different from my personality, and I'm glad you realized it before, but it's just one of those things where you're like, oh, I don't think this actually makes sense based on who I am.
Yeah.
But to your question, yeah, I think it's really couple dependent. I feel like one thing that's consistent is like when they're more likely to happen when your energy is low and like needs are high, especially from the baby. And especially, again, like if those expectations aren't clear. But I think that for us too, late nights were a thing. I am not proud to admit this, but I sent some like embarrassingly angry text messages to my husband at like 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would just like delete them. And he was like, what was this again? But it's like peak exhaustion. And like you're saying, like in the early weeks when the babies are waking up every 2 to 3 hours, it can get really frustrating, especially if it's the same parent who's waking up. And it can kind of spiral pretty quickly. I think for other parents, early mornings can also be a trigger time, because it might just be when the baby is just waking up and you might just be falling asleep. It's also kind of like when the reality of the day is hitting you. Like you're like, oh my God, I have appointments, I have a work. If you're back at work, there's all these things sort of that start to overload. And then I know some people who had a bit of a hard time with like early evening, because it's like the witching hour for some babies. There's
Yeah.
like fussy, cluster feeding, which is essentially they're just feeding really frequently. You're thinking about dinner, and that can also cause sort of like fights and start like maybe even like taking stock of who's done what during the day, which I feel like can spiral pretty quickly as well. But I think essentially it is pretty couple dependent, to be honest. And ours, like yours, was the late night ones.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know. My husband can go off of 3 to 4 hours of sleep, which is shocking if you would have met him in the first year, because he was sleeping like 6 hours. But I, on the other hand, need like 6 to 8 hours of sleep. So yeah, the fourth trimester was a little rough.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it's something I knew about myself, but I don't think I knew quite what it would be like, just because yeah, my husband, like, he needs sleep too, but he can still be like a kind person when he doesn't have sleep, and I turn into a monster, so that wasn't a good thing to experience for me.
That's funny. Hormones are crashing.
Yeah.
It happens. It's a good excuse. Anyway, we have more questions coming up, but let's take another quick break and hop back into it. Welcome back. We are continuing our conversation. So I want to pivot this little section into how can moms, wives communicate to their partners their needs, right? And so for me, fourth trimester was a lot. I spoke about it before the break that, hormones are crashing. I was breastfeeding through the night. So I was waking up literally every 2 to 3 hours. And silly me, I've done episodes on this, on the boob group, which is another podcast, and on our show too, that I was like over pumping. I forget what the term is, but it's like triple feeding or something like that,
Yeah,
where you're
yep.
pumping and nursing, and horrible advice I got. So if you are doing that, definitely research it and talk to a lactation consultant, because you might not need to be doing it as long as I did. Anyway, but I was triple feeding throughout the night for way too long, which caused engorgement. Anyway, so I was very uncomfortable during the fourth trimester, and I wasn't communicating that. And it's hard to communicate that to, at least for me, for my husband, because he does not breastfeed and doesn't have boobs. So he didn't understand, I'm really full right now and it hurts when the baby latches, but I don't want to give her a bottle. bottle because I want her to nurse overnight. It was just all that. Anyway, I'm trauma dumping on you right now, but
No,
how
no,
can
no.
how wives and moms communicate, to their partners, especially in the crucial fourth trimester when communicating is difficult, right? Because your hormones are crashing, you want to do everything, and then you're dealing with potential visitors coming to see the new baby and, working out, okay, fourth trimester, am I going to return to work? Am I not? There's a lot going on. So how can, wives and moms communicate the best of their ability during this very sensitive time?
Yeah, no, that is an excellent question. And I think so something you just said around like the what you were going through when you were trying to breastfeed and triple feed and not being able to communicate that to your husband just because he hasn't experienced it made me think of this one. But I feel like that's also a part of the reason why I think, you know, obviously things change after the baby's here, but to the extent possible before the baby arrives, learning about these things together and your partner, especially if it's your husband, isn't going to understand because they're not experiencing it. But if you can learn together sort of around what breastfeeding entails, what it feels like for the woman, and what postpartum feels like, at least on an intellectual level, there's some sort of like, okay, I understand the things that can happen, and you can start to build that foundation together. And then I think when you're actually in the thick of it, again, we touched on this a little bit, but it's really hard. I feel like there's, like there's like tips and tricks, but it's so hard when you're not sleeping and it's just you're overwhelmed. But I do think that wives can try to be um, simple and clear about what they need. If you need to do something for yourself, if you need them to decide what's for dinner and you can't think anymore, just say that whenever you can, because it's not always going to be possible. And also, I think both partners, if you can build in some time to take a quick walk or just do a check in when the baby is napping to ask each other proactively how you're doing, that can be really, really helpful because it doesn't always need to be like a big emotional conversation. Sometimes these small things can actually be really, really helpful and go a long way. And I feel like I am a broken record on this, but just also giving yourself a lot of grace. Like it's not going to be perfect 100% of the time. And learning from miscommunications and missteps, I think can be really, really helpful too, without being too hard on yourselves because it's a really, really tough time. And at least for me, it was even hard to know, like I said, with breastfeeding, it was really even hard for me to know what I was thinking, much less communicate it clearly. So again, I think that grace part is really, really crucial too.
I so agree. I want to pivot a little bit because we've been chatting a lot about the fourth trimester. What about avoiding conflicts in the second half of your baby's first year of life? So like maybe like 4 to 6 months, all the way up to a year. I'm really trying to think. I think my husband and I were really gotten a good groove. He went back to work. He had a lot of time off, which was really lovely. And so we just kind of got in a groove. When he would get home from work, I would get some work done and he would take, our daughter for like 1 to 2 hours and we would all cook dinner together. And so for us, the second half was really easier. But I know for women who do go back to work and they have to navigate with pickups with daycare and husband working long hours, it could also just continue on with conflict. What are your tips for the second half of baby's life?
Yeah, this is one where it's so I'm like very much by nature kind of like, oh, I'll go with the flow, we'll figure it out as we go type person. But I think one of the things that I've really learned in sort of parenthood is the benefits of over communicating and
Hmm.
little planning. So I went back to work after 4 months. Luckily, I work from home. So it was an easier transition than having to drop her off anywhere. But my husband goes into work. So it was a lot of me sort of navigating before and after childcare. And initially I kind of went into it with my usual sort of like, we'll figure things out, we'll be on the same page. And what I learned was actually over communicating is key. Like who is in charge of morning, who is in charge of bedtime routine. Often we actually do it together. What are we doing for dinner? And just talking to each other about almost every second of the day and making sure that we're on the same page. And that's helped avoid a lot of sort of like expectations or things that weren't said clearly, and has been really, really helpful in the sort of second half of the first year of navigating baby. I think it's also been helpful that your hormones sort of start to settle a little bit more, and you can start to see things clearly, at least I could. And so that aspect of it was helpful as well.
I love that. And then baby, hopefully, is sleeping a little bit better through the night, which means everyone's sleeping, a little bit better
Yeah.
through the night. I absolutely agree with you with that. Yeah, the second half of the first year, definitely I felt like I got my spark back a little bit. I was able to go on more longer walks and even just more alone time too. Like I felt confident I could just leave my daughter with my husband and go get my nails done, or literally
Oh
go
my
take,
gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I
like
honestly like, I
spa
remember the
days and
first
stuff.
time. Yeah. And the first time I was also just less scared of things. And I think I had by this time also discovered what I was telling you initially, where I'm like, oh, we need to figure out what actually works for us and our personalities. So we were much better at that as well. But I remember the first time I took her out on her stroller, I was for some reason terrified. Like, I don't know what I thought was going to happen. But we were just walking down the sidewalk and I was like, I'm going to run into something. And then obviously that dissipates the more you do it. But yes, the second half was definitely very, very different. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, you just feel more confident. So, last question in this section, and this is very controversial. So, whatever you give, we will definitely take
Hit
back.
me.
How can adding boundaries to new grandparents contribute to arguments within the first year? And this is a really hot topic on social media. I think just going around right now is just boundaries with the grandparents, right? I think a lot of us are millennials or a little bit younger, maybe a little bit older. Anyway, but then we're dealing with some boomer grandparents.
Yeah.
And what they did years ago is not what we're doing. For example, I did not sleep train, but I was a sleep trained baby. You know what I mean? And so that's very interesting when we're navigating sleep and visitation and holidays with grandparents. I'm like, okay, baby's going down at 9. So am I. Like, I'm not putting her down and staying up with you guys. Anyway, so how can adding boundaries to new grandparents contribute to arguments? Because I know I am okay telling my parents no, but sometimes my husband has a hard time telling his parents no. So that could be a conflict within our marriage. What are your tips for that?
Yeah, and I want to say on this one, I feel like this is sort of it's on a lot of topics, but this one is definitely a hot topic. But I do think every couple's dynamic is different. I think for some, they love the extra support. They may not want any boundaries and it like works out well. And these are like the lucky people, right? And then
Mhm.
like you were saying, for others, it's just like too many opinions, too much pressure, or just like not enough space to figure out things as new parents. This is one I really, really, I mean, all of these topics, but definitely this one I think is really helpful to start talking about before the baby is here so that you can navigate any differences in how you want to approach things. Because it's not just like you have an approach, it's also then for a lot of people, it's two sets of parents, right? That you have to navigate this with, and there might be different family dynamics. There's so much to consider. So, this is definitely one where if you can start talking about it before the baby is here, it's super, super helpful because it gets really tricky when you're not on the same page because you can end up being like stuck in the middle or looking like the bad guy. And when you're navigating it when the baby is here, again, like we said, like emotions are really high. So it really depends on, if you're feeling the pressure or the opinions from either set of grandparents, I think understanding what might work and what might not work within your family dynamic with them, because it can often be things like, starting simply, I guess, even just, thinking about, should we just tell them, set clear expectations with them around, can you text before coming over, or we
Mhm.
expect you to wash hands before holding the baby. We're trying something different now than how you did it, but love your support. So starting with like simple statements and seeing how they respond to that. And then if that works, that's great. But if it doesn't, again, working as a team to figure out what makes sense next. What kind of boundaries do you want to set in place and how do you communicate them clearly? Again, as a team is so important so that no one ends up looking like the bad guy. But I think in my head, a step-by-step process is what works well because you start in one place. If it works, great. If it doesn't, adjust, recalibrate. And the being a team piece is really, really key to this, I think.
I love that you said that. I remember when I had my daughter, we were in Hawaii and my both of our parents are from California, so it was a flight over, which was actually a blessing in disguise because
Yeah.
they totally had to plan when they wanted to come. And we welcomed them with open arms. But I remember during the tricky parts of like, do we have them out for this holiday? Who are we going to invite? Are you going to tell your mom or me? It was always at the end of it, I would always tell them like, we are on the same team. Like this is good. This isn't a big conflict. We're on the same team. We want the same goals. So I do agree that reminding each other that like you're on the same team, you want what's best for your little family. And sometimes that is no family coming, if it's just
Yeah.
keeping things small and that's okay. And so, yes, I love that you honed in on the whole team aspect because between a marriage, you guys are a team and you want what's best for your family. And I love that. And so, last follow up question to that is if it's just getting really tricky, I guess, how do you do a reset, right? Because I know sometimes my husband and I would do a reset, like, okay, let's go back to what the issue is at hand because sometimes it could get really overwhelming and way out of context. How would you recommend a reset for couples who are kind of stuck in a rut of whether it is grandparents, boundaries, or whether it's just sleep issues or one partner feeling like they're doing more work? How would you recommend a reset in communication for the new parent stuck in that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that's worked for us, to be honest, is well, actually, two things. One is if there's been like a recent argument or disagreement, just take a little bit of space from when that happens to come back to it because you don't want to come back to it when emotions are still high and you're still feeling all the feelings. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is when you do come back, trying as much as possible to let go of the keeping the score or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, because ideally you're coming back to it with the mindset of wanting to find a different path forward, right? So both admit that you may have done things not like you wanted to in the past. So if you come to it with that mindset, I think the second thing that's important is being able to be like, okay, well, now we're not going to use this conversation to do like a tit for tat. Looking back, we want to look forward together, and really figuring out what are the things, the simple manage your expectations on what's possible. What are the things that we can start to do things differently, and letting go of like mistakes in the past, because I think that can really hamper any kind of change that you're trying to make.
I love that. So we have more questions coming up, but first let's take one of our last breaks.
I feel like we touched on these themes throughout, but I think like there's a couple of things that have been helpful in terms of just how to approach your dynamic with your partner. I feel like, we kind of touched on this. You're both learning
Okay.
together. So whenever possible, and again, you can't, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, but assume good intent whenever you're frustrated. And I just mentioned this, but try not to keep score. I think that can be really, really challenging dynamic in a relationship once you start to do that. Try to be there for each other and ask, what can I do for you? How can I make it easier for you? And then don't be afraid to get outside help. I think, like a therapist or a lactation consultant, like we were talking about earlier, can be so crucial in helping make this an easier transition. And then, sorry, the last one I think that's really important is just knowing the signs of postpartum depression, I think are really, really important. I think there are some statistics that 1 in 7 moms suffer from postpartum depression, and I think 1 in 10 dads also. And there's different signs in both moms and dads. Moms, I think, feel an intense sadness and hopelessness and disconnected from the baby, panic attacks, and dads experience it a little bit differently, like sudden anger outbursts. And it hits hardest actually 3 to 6 months after the baby's here, not when they're newborn. So I think just knowing these signs and knowing if and when you need to get help is also really, really critical, because it might not happen, but it might. So knowing the signs, I think, is just really helpful way to prep for it.
I love that. So where can our listeners find you and how can our listeners buy your book?
You can find us at daisiesguide.com. We're also on Instagram and TikTok at the handle daisies at daisies. Redo at daisies.guide. We share tips, stories, and insights about navigating this wild ride of parenthood. And you can buy our Daisies Guide directly from our website, www.daisiesguide.com, or you can also find us on Amazon. And we've actually had a lot of people buy this as a baby shower gift. So that's an idea as well.
I was just thinking that. I'm like, this would be such a good gift for a baby shower, a gift for mom, or even like as friends. I know I loved my mom friends that have come out of me having a child that you meet at mom groups or mom classes, or I have a good girlfriend. We got pregnant right around the same time. And she just welcomed her second baby, and I'm, expecting my second anyway. So we were just navigating this lifestyle together, and we are pretty candid with each other. And so I love, like, if, a friend is going through some struggles with their partner, this would be a really good gift to just kind of send them their way, and not be too intrusive, but just still positive and like, I'm here for you. I'm rooting for you. This is just tough weeks or months. Everyone kind of goes through it. And so I love that you said baby shower, or even just if a girlfriend is struggling or wants some resources and you don't know what to do because you're not a therapist. I'm not one. I would give them podcast recommendations and probably your book.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, no, that's exactly how we were thinking about it too. So I'm really happy to hear you say that.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I loved this episode. I love talking about just parenting and the truth behind it. I love talking about fun stuff because parenting is the best. I absolutely love it, but it does come with some struggles. So thank you for joining me today and just kind of airing it out and saying, it's okay. This happens and there's ways to work through it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was really, really great talking to you. I love being here. And I think, one thing I didn't say, there are actually questions in here that are a little bit more around the fun stuff. So like, what activities do you want to share with your kid? What values do you want to pass down? So we get into that a little bit as well, because like you said, it's definitely not easy. So we wanted those questions, but we also wanted to highlight the joy and the fun things that come with parenthood as well.
Yay. And I feel like when you're on a team and when, I don't know, at least for me, when my husband and I were doing really well, like we were just in sync, like we didn't even have to really speak to each other about what we needed to do with our daughter. It really was a fun time. Like weekends were fun, dinners were fun, it's fun. I love that you mentioned what types of values and what types of probably even like traditions you want to instill.
Activities and traditions. And oh my God, that is the goal. Like getting into that sync where you're like, yes, we have talked the talks and now we're doing it. I love that.
Yay. Perfect. Well, thank you. And that wraps up our show for today. Thanks for listening. If you love newbies as much as we do, please consider checking out the amazing businesses that sponsor our show week after week. And we'd also love for you to tell another new mama about this resource, which of course is absolutely free. And if you want to check out some of our other podcasts we produce, such as Preggy Pals, Parent Savers, we spoke a lot about breastfeeding. The Bood Group is a great resource for that. And Twin Talks, and visit our website at newmommymedia.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram for more information, giveaways, and more. Our handle is at newmommymedia. Thanks for listening to Newbies.
This has been a New Mommy Media production. The information and material contained in this episode are presented for educational purposes only. Statements and opinions expressed in this episode are not necessarily those of New Mommy Media and should not be considered facts. While such information and materials are believed to be accurate, it is not intended to replace or substitute for professional medical advice or care, and should not be used for diagnosing or treating healthcare problem or disease or prescribing any medication. If you have questions or concerns regarding your physical or mental health or the health of your baby, please seek assistance from a qualified healthcare provider.
Hey mamas, don't forget to check out Mighty Moms. It's our online community built for new moms just like you. Not only can you connect with other moms, but you can also join us backstage for special mom-only online events. And you'll also be notified when we're recording so you can join us as a special guest. Visit our website, newmommymedia.com, and click on the Mighty Moms banner. It's free. That's newmommymedia.com. See you there.